Hello, this is BBC News. I'm Catherine Biarahanga. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has said that any Western troops deployed to Ukraine would be legitimate targets for Moscow to attack. His warning comes after France's President Macron said 26 Western allies had pledged to deploy troops by land, sea or air to Ukraine as part of security guarantees as soon as any ceasefire or peace deal was agreed with Russia. President Putin was answering questions after giving a speech to an economic forum in Vladivostok in eastern Russia, where he's been giving more details of how he plans to further economic and security cooperation with China. He's just returned from a summit in Beijing hosted by Xi Jinping, where the two men stood shoulder to shoulder with the leaders of India and North Korea. Will Vernon, who was based in Moscow for the BBC, has been watching Vladimir Putin's speech. He gave us his assessment.
He's been making lots of very grand statements about the strengths, alleged strengths of the Russian economy and the benefits of cooperating with Russia. One thing he did mention was developing the Arctic, right? Development of the Arctic for the economic benefit, not only of Russia, but also of America. And we know that this is something that plays very well with Donald Trump. He's very interested, isn't he, in the kind of strategic significance of the Arctic. We know about his views on Greenland, for example. And Mr. Putin said today that he has received proposals from US companies to work with Russia in developing the Arctic. Now, that may or may not be true. I can't imagine there's a very long queue of American businesses waiting to re-enter the Russian market, especially seeing as there are, of course, still sanctions in place. But I think it does show that Putin is very keen to explore the possibilities of doing some sort of deal with America, most importantly of all, over the heads of the Europeans, because Mr. Putin wants to sideline Europe, sideline Ukraine, and do a deal directly with Donald Trump. And he sees Donald Trump as a businessman, a deal maker, and things like the Arctic. He also mentioned rare earth mineral deposits today as well. There's a lot of those locked up in Russia's vast territory. So that kind of thing plays very well in the White House.
Do you think this will go down well with Donald Trump? Of course, he was upset about the summit in Beijing earlier this week, and of course, seeing Vladimir Putin meeting there with China's president, of course, the North Korean leader as well.
Yes, Mr. Trump made certain comments about these three countries conspiring against the United States, doesn't he? I think that that summit and that big lavish military parade in Beijing, that all went very well for Vladimir Putin, and he was already kind of riding a wave of success, wasn't he, after that Alaskan summit with Donald Trump, when he was kind of embraced, quite literally, by the American president. That played very well because that was a very stark symbol that the attempts to isolate Russia internationally have failed. So kind of riding that wave, Putin went into China, and he was very chummy indeed, wasn't he? Both with the Chinese President Xi Jinping, but also with the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Also talks with the North Korean leader, and the narrative around those events in China was very much that, this is the new world order, that the unipolar kind of global order that was dominated by the United States and its allies, that's over, there's kind of new kids in town. That kind of narrative, and there was a lot of that chat, wasn't there, around the events in China. Putin hearing that will be doing cartwheels around the Kremlin, because that's exactly the kind of message that he wants to put out there, that, the West is in decline. This is the new world order. Stick with us.
And of course, the Kremlin rejecting any suggestion of foreign troops being deployed in Ukraine. What does this mean for any potential peace deal?
Well, I mean, this has been the position of the Kremlin for a long time. Vladimir Putin himself has said many, many times before that Moscow cannot accept any European forces inside Ukraine. In fact, Russia is demanding the complete opposite, right? That as part of any sort of peace deal on Ukraine, that all Western military supplies and weapons and advisors and everything else are withdrawn from Ukraine. Now, this coalition of the willing, as it's called, plan, is all about the day after some sort of ceasefire or peace deal, right? Well, the elephant in the Elysee Palace yesterday was that, what ceasefire and what peace deal? either of those things seem quite a long way off, perhaps further than they've been for quite a long time. Russia believes it is winning the war in Ukraine. Ukrainian troops are retreating, albeit quite slowly. Putin has intensified his bombardments of Ukrainian cities. There is no sign yet of these very harsh sanctions that Donald Trump has promised to impose on Russia. So some people are asking, why would Putin want peace?
Well, our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg has been doorstepping Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov in Vladivostok and asked him about the talks between President Zelensky and other European leaders.
As far as we can understand, they're speaking about ensuring security guarantees for Ukraine by deploying European forces, European regiments in Ukraine. Thus, they're returning back to the main reason of the conflict. The main reason of the conflict was the attempt of NATO to infiltrate into Ukraine, thus endangering our country. So we consider it a danger for us, presence of international forces or any foreign forces or NATO country forces on the soil of Ukraine next to our borders. So in our understanding, it will not help us get closer to the solution of the Ukrainian conflict.
But why doesn't Ukraine have the right, as far as Russia is concerned, to invite whoever it wants, whichever soldiers it wants onto its territory? I mean, Russia is inviting North Korean troops.
Then it's a danger for us. It's a real danger for us because we are an enemy of NATO.
North Korean troops are a danger to Ukraine.
Written in NATO's documents. So we cannot afford that. And we'll do whatever is necessary to ensure our security. Preferably, would like to reach our goals by diplomatic and peaceful means. When we don't have these possibilities, we'll continue a special military operation.
President Putin this week said there was a certain light at the end of the tunnel in terms of resolution to the war. What light does he see? It looks pretty dark, the situation right now.
Well, actually, what we see the readiness of the Russian Federation for dialogue. We see the readiness of the President of the Russian Federation for any meetings, including meetings on the highest level. But in advance, they should be well prepared. Also, we see the very constructive efforts by the President of the United States in order to assist the process of settlement around Ukraine. And we see the outrageous efforts of European countries to provoke continuation of the war.
You say that President Putin...
This is a situation de facto.
You say President Putin is ready to meet President Zelensky.
Yes.
But when he says, President Putin, that he'll meet him if he flies to Moscow, I mean, that is a non-starter. That seems to indicate that Moscow... That seems to indicate that Moscow is more interested in the capitulation of Ukraine than a peace deal.
Not at all. Not at all. He is invited to Moscow to talk, not to capitulate.
If he's ready to talk, why not choose somewhere else? Hungary, Switzerland, the Vatican, that is mutually acceptable.
This is the proposal by Putin. This is his proposal. So, we see that it was rejected by President Zelensky personally, by his foreign minister. So let's continue.
Do you think it will happen? Will it happen, a meeting between the two presidents?
After a very serious preparation, a serious homework should be done before.
And that was our Russia editor speaking to the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov there.